Oh, I forgot my clicker.
Alyx has successfully clicker trained herself.
No, I haven't.
Hello, 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 and ahoy, hoy! Welcome to What the Trans.
What the trans?
Yep, it's us. We are back. I am Ashleigh, and with me are
Alyx,
Flint.
hello.
yeah, I set that one up, didn't I? I definitely should have been specific. Yes, so I'm with Flint
Hello.
and Alyx,
Hello.
and here we are. How you both doing?
I'm doing chill. I literally just finished watching the new Frankenstein.
Is it good?
Okay, so it's good in some ways. I love it because it's telling some parts of stories that I've always wanted to be told. It's framing it in ways that I really like. There are other moments where I'm a little bit like, okay, I guess I'll give a little spoiler warning for anyone who, because it is actually a very recent release. But yeah, the thing that I love the most is how much more it is about Frankenstein being an abusive piece of shit.
Yes.
It's less about this man plays God, he's so magnificent, and then the sins of his consequences or whatever. It's a little bit more like, oh yeah, of course you're going to become jaded and really volatile if you have this as the closest thing to a father figure. The by which I mean the Adam the creature in comparison to the father figure of Frankenstein. But I think I'm just desperate for a Frankenstein story that is like coming from a more femme lens. I don't know how to put that, but like the women in this story are not. They're
almost not in the story.
Yeah, they're almost not in the story. Mia Goth plays both of the most important like female characters in the story, and it's very much like she's framed as sort of, you know, the star-crossed lover / teacher. And I get it. Like, you know, you go into Guillermo del Toro, you're going to get very melancholic monster fucker energy. That's always just the vibe.
Yeah.
But like, I just felt like the characterization of the women was really flat, and it opens up on a scene of the monster being very classically Frankenstein monster, which I understand, you know, you're setting that up so it's so manic, so that then there's, you know, but it's coded ever so slightly Supermanish, that I'm less fond of. But, you know, the performances are fucking gorgeous. The body horror is beautiful. The setting, it's done so well. Like, I'm not saying I don't like it. I really, really did enjoy it. And you know, like I said, having the conversation of, you know, this dude who is fucking with things far beyond his measure is a much more interesting concept to me than the notion of playing God. But the idea to me that he is that it's kind of, he makes it a more romantic story, that makes sense. But like, I kind of, one of the parts of Frankenstein we've never really seen that I would love a lot more, and I think we've only seen it in, there's an adaptation I can't remember, or a thing that's based on it I can't remember. But like, Frankenstein's like younger, right? Like, he's not like this old maniacal mad genius as he's often kind of like cast as, where he's like a dude in his like 30s to 40s. He is like freshly 20. He's like a student who's fucking with this shit. And I kind of, I wish that was there a little bit more, of like feeling like the unhingedness is in part coming from him being so young and immature and not ready to be a parent, if you want to phrase it that way. But yeah, that's my letterboxed 5-minute review.
Yes, yeah, your surprisingly detailed 5-minute review of the new Frankenstein. Thank you very much. I definitely will give that a go.
Yeah.
How about you, Alyx? What's new? What's shaking? What's been happening?
Yeah, it's been shaking. Yeah, I've been pretty good. Pretty busy over the past week, I think. We've recently launched our Minecraft server on the Discord.
Indeed we did.
Yes, so we've had a whole bunch of people going about doing Minecrafty things. I've put a base in this gigantic crater, and named it Alyx's Big Hole, and tons of people have fallen into it and died. So it's also the most volatile hole I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
So it's been a blast, really.
Yeah, sounds good. I haven't been super involved with it because I play Minecraft and my friends all think, "Ooh, let's set up a Minecraft server." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool, awesome." And then I get in and I get bored after about 20 minutes. So, and I know there's so much stuff to do in Minecraft and whatever, but like, I did it all ages ago, kind of thing. Because I have played a lot of Minecraft, really. And maybe I just resent the fact that I lost a save game that I sunk. You know, that was my monument to unemployment, was that game, and I lost it. So maybe I'm just annoyed.
Yeah.
Well, so
valid.
I had a birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday
Thank you very much.
to you.
Thank you.
Birthday.
It was some days ago now, but yeah, it was good. Nice. Went out for a nice bougie meal with my friends. Because that's the sort of thing I enjoy now and you will too. It'll happen to you as well. The bougie truck will hit you and you'll go to places based on how nice how nice the menu sounds. Everybody understood the assignment because almost everybody got me a record or a book, and in one case both. So it was good. It was nice.
Oh, exactly. And you got some good records from what I could see.
I did get some good records. I got I say new Pink Floyd album, as in it's finally a vinyl reissuing of an old film they did, the Live at Pompeii, so that's new.
Oh yeah, I saw like a trailer of that at the IMAX at one point.
Yeah, because it was out at the cinema for a while, and I foolishly didn't book to go and see it at the Pictures, and I should have done, and taken maybe some special brownies with me.
Yeah, that's the vibe.
So yeah, had that. That was great to listen to again. Prodigy, all the singles compilation, the one that's all the singles between 1990 and 2005. So it's got Breathe, Firestarter, Poison, just so many absolute bangers, one after another. And then two that I hadn't heard of. So one by a group called We Intend to Cause Havoc, and the acronym for that is, of course, Witch.
I like that.
Right?
I like that a lot.
The album's called Sogolo or Sogolo, whatever, unsure how you say it. That's from this year, so been listening to that. That's got a lot of stuff going on, right? It's like funk inspired, but also, you know, rocks bleeding through. It's all over the place, and I love it. And there's a trans punk album from 2015 called Imaginary Life by Warriors. So I've got one album by Warriors, one by Witch, one by The Prodigy, and one by Pink Floyd. So it's 2 P's and 2 W's.
Yes.
So that was good. So yeah, I've been listening to music and reading books.
I like that. Flint is in part a namesake to Flint from The Prodigy.
Nice. Keith Flint,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Keith.
Yeah, rip to a real one. Fucking
Yeah.
that dude was like my Elvis when he died. Like, I remember the day that he died because my friend was really hungover, and she'd had an argument with I think about she sent me a message being like, can I come over and be really miserable for a bit? And I was like, yeah, as long as you're okay with me being really miserable. She's like, why, what's up? I was like, Keith Flint from The Prodigy died. And she went, no. And she knew what that meant to me. So we both just sat around the house feeling depressed all day. It was great. It was like, you know, I'm feeling bad, you're feeling bad. It's not gonna shift. Let's just sit with it and both be in the vibe together and enjoy the community of it, which is very sweet.
So yeah, speaking of mourning,
Actually, yeah, it's actually quite a good segue, because it's that time of year, of course. We've got Trans Day of Remembrance coming up on the 20th, and we've got some events happening all around the country. The day of T-Daw is the 20th, and so that's Thursday, and the Manchester Vigil is taking place on Thursday the 20th, Sackville Gardens, as it usually is. Arrival from 6:30, everything starts at 7 o'clock. So yeah, if you're looking to observe Trans Day of Remembrance in Manchester, maybe you should come along to that. I'll be there. There will be a reading of the names and all the stuff that you would usually expect. And it's, you know, it's good. We get together and we hold space, and then we retreat to our respective pubs or houses to go warm up again, because it's late November and shit gets cold.
No, definitely.
But yes, so there's more T-Door events, isn't there?
Yes, and similarly in the northeast, there is the vigils happening in Newcastle and Durham, both on the 20th of November. The one in Durham is in front of the Bill Bryson Library. It's by the Durham Trans Association, part of the uni. And the one in Newcastle is at 1 Strawberry Lane. The Newcastle one is from 6:30 till 8 p.m. and the Durham one is from 6:45 until 8. So if you are local to the area and you want some community at that time, then go there.
Yes, and down in London, there's two of them going on. I haven't got the times, but there's one in Trafalgar Square by Trans Legal Clinic and one in Soho Square by Not a Phase.
There's also, if you want something a bit different that's not quite the same as a vigil, there is a little event that happened last year in Newcastle that will be happening again this year, next week on the 22nd of November. Transstock, which is it's Trans Day of Remembrance edition, and it's a ticketed event, but it's go check it out. There's some really good performers there, including Jade Mia Broadhead, who and Dinky Passetti, who were at one of the prides that I covered a couple of years back now.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yes, did the brilliant song Trans Exclusionary Reactionary Fascists. Love it. So so if you've got the spare bob in your pocket, then, shoot on down, have a look. If you do decide to go, 90% of the proceeds go to Be Trans and 10% of the proceeds go to support the venue as well. So it's evenly split. It's all basically for charity and for community. So yeah, have that.
Beautiful.
So with that then, let's crack on with, yes, the news.
Who keeps putting this shit in?
Well, things keep happening, unfortunately.
They do
God
keep
damn it.
happening. And that's unfortunately, that's kind of what we signed up for, isn't it?
A little bit. This is an entirely voluntary position.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is entirely self-inflicted.
I've been doing this since like 2018, which is just crazy now to kind of reflect on, like, oh my God. But I've been like doing something that's covering the news, because I started doing that on local television in Manchester in 2015, right? So I've been doing this for 10 years and I've never been paid for it. And that's fine, but it's a weird thing to reflect on, because it was recently, like last month, it would have been my sort of 10-year anniversary of being a trans person who occasionally talks about the news.
And if you would like to support Ashleigh for 10 years of unpaid labour, then feel free to join our Patreon or search up What the Trans Ko-fi.
Yeah.
So the thing that we normally do to start the news is, of course, we hop across the pond. Pond hopping, we're hopping across the pond.
How bad could it be?
Pond hopping, we're hopping across the pond. How bad could it be?
Our poor listeners.
Oh, poor editors. They're the ones I feel sorry for.
Oh yeah, shit, 'cause I've got to reopen the whole project file for that.
Yeah, I guess the listeners get the polished version, and then we...
Yeah.
So the editors have to deal with the raw, unfiltered.
Sorry, Ambers.
Okay, so there's been a bit of a mixed bag at the US Supreme Court over the last couple of weeks. To make it easier to listen to, we're going to do the bad news first and finish with the good news. Also, the bad news happened before the good news, so we're doing the bad news first because that's how time works. So on November the 6th, news broke that the US Supreme Court, and specifically the court's 6 Republican appointees, had issued an order that allowed the Trump administration to go ahead with its anti-trans, anti-intersex passport policy that insists a passport must display a person's biological sex, i.e. the sex that they were assigned at birth. This was in reference not to a Supreme Court case, but one that's currently with a district court in Massachusetts. Short version, Secretary of State Marco Rubio's passport rules were challenged in the district court back in June and were blocked. This new Supreme Court ruling has now unblocked them. Shorter version, Mean Man Makes Silly Rule woman judge says no, then big group of judges say mean man silly rule was right. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of 3 Democrat appointees on the Supreme Court, wrote as part of her dissent that this order is, quote, part of a broader pattern of this court using its emergency docket to cavalierly pick the winners and losers in cases that are still pending in the lower courts. Which, yeah, it is. Also points for using a word that I don't really know how to say. Cavalierly? Cavalierly, whatever.
Cavalierly.
You know, like cleverer than you when you use those words.
Right, yeah. So this is a case that hasn't even properly made it to the Supreme Court yet, but the justices have reached down into a lower court and written in their decision because apparently they can do that now. Now, there's a lot more we can say about this, of course, but let's talk about the good and sensible thing that happened on November 10th. You may remember Kim Davis. She's the county clerk from Kentucky who refused to issue same-sex marriage licenses back in 2015. More recently, she submitted a challenge to the Supreme Court asking them to completely overturn same-sex marriage. Perhaps surprisingly, the court denied the petition and didn't even comment on it. Just nope. Now, according to some media commentary around the decision, this just indicates that there is no appetite in the court to revisit same-sex marriage. 4 out of 9 judges would need to agree to take that case forward. Kim Davis asked the Supreme Court to A. reverse an order that said she had to pay more than $300,000 to a couple she denied a marriage license to, and B. to overturn same-sex marriage ruling altogether. So, fun fact, with the Supreme Court saying nope, this means that Kim Davis is now on the hook for £300,000.
$300,000.
Plus legal fees and all that gubbins. So, as we've said, bit of a hodgepodge from the Supreme Court of late.
Seems like a premature loser's corner.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see. Yeah, for sure.
So this is the thing. The way that these laws are and these protections are set up in the US means that they are kind of able to be chipped away at like this and have these challenges brought to them.
Yep.
This is how Roe v. Wade ended up being repealed. So just because it wasn't successful this time doesn't mean there aren't going to be redoubled efforts in a few years, which is why it's so important to have like more than case law.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we'll
definitely.
see. Hopefully it's a loser's corner, but it would take, I think, a bit more structural rejigging.
To be fair, I mean, it's more of a loser's corner for Kim specifically, but yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, we don't need a loser's corner to know that she's a loser.
Yeah. Well, so something I do just want to point out real quick, which is, so she's been backed all the way, right from 2015 onwards, by a group called Liberty Counsel, which are not. So I looked them up, and they're a Christian ministry. And they do, quote, strategic litigation to promote evangelical Christian values. So they're a lawfare group, basically. They might have lost Davis, but they will have other people ready to step in, other players ready to take the field.
Hey, batter.
Steps to the opposition. Hey, batter, swing back.
So watch out for them, Liberty Counsel. They'll be back, even if Davis isn't.
Liberty Counsel is such an unfair name because Liberty Counsel feels like the entities that you should meet when you do enough mushrooms. Like that feels like that's the reward for a heroic dose. Don't do drugs unless you really know how to do them. But fucking rude. Stealing that for a story.
So more on this. Undoubtedly. Now we're now back to actually doing pond hopping rather than just faking you out by playing half the jingle and saying, but no. We had our fun with that, but don't worry, we're back. But now let's boogie on back to Blighty, because what's next?
So we're off to chat about the Lib Dems today. So, prior to the last episode, some folks who were listening may have thought that the Lib Dems may have been solid and consistent in their policies when it comes to trans people. But the internal running and constitution now no longer reflects the progressive look their public messaging wants you to believe. This is because early last month, the Lib Dems changed their constitution. You would have thought a constitution change would require discussions in conference, a vote, and so on. But in this case, the two returning officers in the party changed it overnight. So not very liberal, and not very democratic either. You might be wondering what this constitution change is, and that would be their gender quotas. But in this case, it's about their election and the makeup of the committees and the proportion of men and women inside of these committees. Prior to the change, the Lib Dems system was based on self-ID, but with a decision from the returning officers, it was changed to be based on the loathsome biological sex. This follows after a letter was sent from For Women Scotland to the Liberal Democrats returning officer demanding they change the rules on quotas. So now trans people are prevented from being elected into seats that they've been campaigning for, because yes, this also happened right in the middle of internal elections that were happening inside of the party whilst nominations were coming in. It's a whole mess, and with that mess, it has caused massive uproar internally inside of the party. The LGBT plus Liberal Democrats condemned the decision, saying it makes a mockery of both our constitution and the clear will of the Federal Council, adding that they believe the party is now in violation of data and human rights law, and called for the decision to be reversed, and asked members who are cis or trans to ask their party to remove their individual data relating to sex and gender from their files under GDPR law. Similar statements also came from Lib Dems Women's Group. Now, there's a lot of back and forth happening. There seems to be new updates about twice a day from our own sources. There were proposals like making a separate quota for trans people to match the population, which was shit and got shot down. It literally separated the LGB from the T. And also, if self-ID wasn't a thing, how they stored the data would be incredibly dodgy. As of writing, the returning officer has resigned their position, and following this, the FAP Committee, or the Federal Appeals Panel Committee, have reversed the decision a day before votes would be cast for the election. But it's been explained to me that it will be trans-inclusive until a cis person challenges an appointment under discrimination, so it's not great. So it's become one hell of a palaver, and now the results of the committee elections have been postponed until it can be all sorted out because it's just gotten so complicated.
The FAP Committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's...
Well, I hope the FAP committee are able to pull it off, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Owen is sitting in the corner right now. He's on the other side of the door. He just heard me say that. I gave you the strangest look.
Hopefully they won't have too much of a stiff opposition.
Hey. Yeah, it'd be a shame if they have to bust any balls.
Yeah.
It's a hands-on job. Sorry, I'm sorry.
We could spend a long time on this particular thing.
But no, like, I mean, to the point, the Lib Dems being inconsistent, who'd have expected?
I know, shocking stuff, amazing scenes, huge if true.
The democratic side of it is just like, there's questions on if returning officers could even change the constitution, because like in one of the losers' corners, we talked about the conference they had. They literally voted down the specific rule change or constitution change to have this happen. So the members are against this being implemented, and they just went ahead of it anyway.
Lawfare.
Yeah. It's a strange one. It's annoying that it's like a fairly common occurrence.
Yeah, so as well as that, there's sort of questions on if gender quotas should be suspended, because if TERFs are going to use it to force inclusion and cause discrimination, then they shouldn't. They'll just get rid of them, and once the Supreme Court decision is fucked off, they can put things back to make it nice.
There's now no dedicated seats for non-binary people, right?
Yeah, exactly, because they tried to third space earlier where, like, there's a trans part of it, but not like a men, women, or self-identify sort of thing. So
I see. So they're third spacing us, kind of.
There was proposals to do that. So, of course, there's a whole tranche, there's like whole opportunities for legal cases, and with Lib Dems, they membership's like halved in the past couple of years, so there's not going to be as much funding for a legal defence if they ever went for one as well.
Yeah. Well, it would have allowed non-binary people, and now it doesn't because they revoked it. That's the point of it, because they were weirdly, it's a mess. It's a mess. Party politics, not a party, and milquetoast political. Anyone ready for some science?
Science!
Yeah, go on,
Yes,
then.
that sounds great. Let's do some science.
So, this week we are taking a moment to do some science! And not just any science, but social science. Enter Gina Gwanfrawi, who undertook a critical analysis of the actions and campaigns of, drumroll please, LGB Alliance! We can have we could have like a lackluster little like party horn there. That'd be sick, thank you. To essentially see if their statements of being a group that advocates for LGBT rights are matched by their actions. And, well, what a surprise when it is found that their actions are overwhelmingly hostile towards trans people as opposed to supporting and advocating for LGBT people. But this is only the surface, because this article is in some ways a follow-up from an earlier one of hers that focused on how mainstream legacy media had been stalking and encouraging anti-trans rhetoric disproportionately by documenting the way that The Guardian was capitulating to and promoting anti-trans rhetoric to demonise and delegitimise the leading charity Stonewall, while being seen as the country's most progressive paper, or at least one of. So, she decided to take a similar approach to examining the way that LGB Alliance were reported on, and found that they had been boosted by legacy media in similar ways, overstating them in comparison to larger organisations such as Stonewall. But the really interesting stuff is that Gwanfrawi has found this network of bolstering viewpoints and massaging moral panics is fitting the notion of strong hegemony that Gatlin spoke about. Hegemony in this case meaning what everyone agrees is normal, which usually means everyone agreeing with what the ruling class says is normal. So there may be a few people wondering why this is such an exciting moment and why we're deciding to bring it up. Well, it's mainly confirming what we have all been saying and seeing for years, right? But the point is that there is now the pattern that we have seen all, generally, dissected in a way that is reliable and undeniable. It is the arguments that we keep making in heart put into codified, clear data. This has a lot more value than you might think, as this science can be deepened and we can develop fortified ways of understanding and explaining how the chips get stacked against us. This is queer theory in action, and to top it all off, it's free. Both of the papers that I've just mentioned and the journal that they came from, which is the Bulletin of Applied Transgender Studies, BATS, which is published by the Applied Centre for Transgender Studies. Free knowledge. Who can argue with that?
Getting all the great acronyms today.
Yeah.
Yeah, spooky ones too.
What, bats
Yeah.
and FAP? I'm not sure FAP is spooky, but bats.
I mean,
certainly
I had a
is.
flashback when I heard the word FAP. I don't know about you. The last time FAP was a popular word, the internet was...
The internet was a lot more of a Wild West, wasn't it? Okay, all right. Yes, so this was great. When I saw this surface, it took me a little while reading through the articles to kind of get the significance of this.
Yeah.
Because as you say, it's,
Yeah.
you know, we've all seen this and we've all kind of thought, well, hang on, how come they get to comment on it and this other organisation don't? You know, why are they the ones that are going to? And we're seeing the same thing now with Sex Matters, right? So I imagine the same research could be run with Sex Matters with largely the same result, I expect. That is definitely speculation on my part. But you know what isn't speculation is this research, which is very interesting, and I'm glad it's happened. And awesome.
Yeah, the more that we start looking into this in the area of humanities and social sciences, the more we're able to, get what we're all seeing put into a context that's like studyable, and not just studyable for the sake of studying it, but studyable so that we can better dismantle it, we can better see the enemy and how it operates, right? And yeah, that's something that I think it's one of the things that's very easy to like sometimes roll your eyes when you like hear, you know, that science has managed to confirm that water is indeed wet. And you're like, well, yeah, we've seen that. Like, but it's one of those things that I think that it makes it really easy to then ignore little bits of good information of like, actually, no, it's really good when we find a way to like operationalize something to a certain extent. I mean, there's gives and takes in all parts of science and stuff, but I saw this and it just made me happy. It made me be like, oh, this is reading that I would have loved to have done when I was back in uni.
Oh, and the actual title of the bit of work, the research paper, was published in the Bulletin of Applied Transgender Studies, BATS, and it was called AstroTurfs. But not like astroturfing, it's astroturf like trans excluding reactionary fascist.
And I love that because the other one is also called The Stoning of Stonewall, because it centers on Stonewall, and banger bars. Just top notch. I love it when someone names it's two ways. I love it when someone gives it either a really snazzy name for their like article or their thesis or whatever, or when they go the opposite route and it becomes so word jargony that I'm like, ooh, it's almost magical realism. Go for it.
Very good. Very good.
I think we're moving from social science to medical science.
To medical science, yes, indeed. Well, kind of, but not really. You see,
no, it's people not following science, isn't it?
This is people presumably sticking with their own predetermined conclusion and sticking with it no matter what good sense science or their employer might say. So we've talked before a little bit about integrated care boards, or ICBs, before now. Within the NHS, they function as the decision makers for different regions and act as the structure above local clinics and GPs. If an ICB makes a decision about a particular type of treatment, then any GP surgery managed by that ICB needs to pay attention. But this next story is about what can happen when an ICB throws its weight around. According to an article written by Sophie Molly and published on Northwest Bylines, the Sussex ICB has been investigating the organisation WellBN, which runs 3 GP surgeries and looks after the treatment of about 25,000 people. Why? Because WellBN have been prescribing and issuing puberty blockers to people under the age of 18 and who have been on the blockers since before the ban was extended by the dead-eyed facsimile of a human Wes Streeting. You may remember when the ban was issued, it clearly stated that any young people who were already receiving blockers would continue to receive them. But it looks like Sussex ICB have skipped over that part and are going after WellBN anyway. Now, I'm going to give you an extended quote from a mother of one of the affected teenagers. Speaking with Sophie Molly, the mother said, quote, "Things have gotten so much worse. We had a meeting with WellBN last night with an update, and the ICB have said that they are no longer allowed to prescribe puberty blockers to under 16s, regardless of the fact that these are children who were prescribed before the ban. They will not be talking to us or our child. Some anonymous medical team, they won't tell us who, will review their records and decide a medical plan moving forward without ever having a conversation with us. All children will be referred to GIDS, which is the Gender Identity Development Service, or CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. They will speed up our referral to GIDS, and they, as in GIDS, will not be prescribing puberty blockers either. My child isn't even in the list. We took him off 2 years ago, and now I'm being told I have no choice. So, forced detransition for all under 16, well, those who can't afford to go private, and being told that they are working on laws to stop us accessing private healthcare also. They have said that no GP in this country will be prescribing blockers, regardless of the fact that they were started before the ban, which is completely the opposite of what the law states, and completely against the letter we were all sent after the ban came into place. We were told that GPs would take over the prescription, except no GP would, except Dr. Sam, which is why we all went to him. We did exactly what we were told to do, and now we are being treated like criminals for it. I am really, really angry, and I keep getting told that the information we are being given is private and confidential, but I cannot sit on this anymore. They are destroying the lives of our children, and we are being expected to sit back and quietly take it." End quote. So the Northwest Byline story contains that quote and others, so please go read it and support their journalism, although I warn you, some of it deals with potential outcomes for these teenagers, and some of them are Well, they're not very good, so just be warned. In response to this, the Sussex ICB eventually provided a press statement which says, quote, "Following concerns raised about some prescribing for children and young people by WellBN in Brighton and Hove that may fall outside of national clinical policy and guidance, we are working with NHS England and have launched an investigation into this activity to ensure the most appropriate care and treatment in line with national clinical policy. Independent clinicians are reviewing medical records and prescriptions will continue during this process. We recognise this may be worrying for families, and our priority is safe, evidence-based care with access to appropriate specialist services and support. NHS Sussex is not seeking to close the WellBN practice. Outside of the investigation, the practice continues to operate as normal." End quote.
Fuck off. Sorry.
That's...
No, it makes my fucking blood boil.
Yeah, for
No.
sure. And just quickly, just to finish off, Dr. Cal Horton has written about this on Blue Sky, and they've said, quote, "The ICB is disingenuous at best to state we have no intention of closing the GP practice. They made legal threats in writing to terminate the contract and close the whole GP practice. This threat was the only reason the GP handed over the child data, an act that has already caused substantial harm." So basically, the ICB strong-armed the GP practice WellBN into handing over a load of patient data about, children under 18s, and said that if you don't hand that data over, we'll completely take your clinic out, and that'll be it. You'll be done. And so they've had to hand it over, and now they're saying, well, you can't have that prescription, even though they can see on the data that they've just been given that they were being prescribed it before the ban came into place. And oh my God, these people.
It's fucking disgusting.
Yes.
It's fucking disgusting, and shame on every single person that is involved in that absolute disgrace. It's abhorrent. It's abhorrent. It's harming children, harming vulnerable people who are made vulnerable by the actions of our fucking government, who put us at such a disadvantage, and they're fucking children. Get a grip. Yeah, I'm not even like presenter. I'm just pissed.
Yeah.
Nah, fuck that.
No.
Fuck that thoroughly. I hope they get what's right for them because they deserve it. It's the least that they deserve. It's the least that anyone deserves.
Yeah, this Sussex ICB can fuck off. I mean, literally, they're just, it's absolutely atrocious that they decided to just do this and just ignore everything. It's just utter horror.
Yep, yeah. They've just decided. Well, you wonder, so there's somebody or several somebodies in ICB who are like, well, no, they are completely opposed to trans healthcare, full stop, because some people are, and have just decided to impose their views onto that space.
This is forced detransition through denial of care.
Yep.
That is completely against even what has been written in the absolute shams of legal documentation that there is that has denied the puberty blockers from now on. It's going against even that. So, I find it quite hard to believe the idea that this is just coming from a piss poor understanding of the law, and that someone is going to all of these lengths, those moves, those actions, you're gunning that hard based on what you just think the law is. No. It comes across very motivated. It comes across very deliberate. It comes across at best as if someone has had a lot of contact with TERFs and has been taken in by them.
Yes.
And most, you've just got someone in the ranks who has been given license to be as cruel as they want, and no one in that ICB is standing up to him.
Yep.
Disgusting. Shame on you all.
No, definitely. It's just state-sponsored conversion therapy torture.
Yep.
And it's a clear word, torture.
I hope that every single child and young person that has had their care taken away from them gets it back as soon as possible, and that they're able to find mechanisms that are as safe as you reasonably can to be able to access the care that they need. They need it in the same way you need fucking insulin. It is not a negotiable for so many trans people. So I just really, like I said, earlier, I hope they get what's right for them, because it's the least that they deserve is healthcare.
Yeah.
So
No, definitely.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's not even just in Sussex either. I've heard stories
No.
of people where police were called on it from other NHS things. It's just utter, just
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many parents that also don't know enough to be able
Yeah.
to advocate strongly for their child because there's concerns about parents being reported to child services for supporting their trans kid. And some parents have that concern about that becoming a thing because it's been part of the conversations and it's awful. It's awful.
It is. But it sucks and we hate it, and let's move on.
On the 7th of November, the EHRC put out an announcement saying that Ganry's latest meeting decided a review of the EHRC's status was not warranted. In this announcement, the EHRC listed like a dozen requests for review that had been made in the past year, including the ones we reported on last episode. But here's the thing. Although Ganry had a meeting at the end of October, the recent submissions from Scottish Trans and TAC, plus the group submission from Transactual CIC, Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance and Amnesty International UK are all meant to be discussed at Ganry's next meeting in spring 2026. Additionally, Ganry have said they have decided to continue monitoring the situation. So that announcement from the EHRC seems pretty weird to say the least. Do they not understand what's being discussed at the next Ganry meeting, or are they being a little sly with us? Because if you only saw what the EHRC announced, you wouldn't know the situation is still being monitored or that further discussion is scheduled for spring. TAC, Scottish Trans and Transactual have issued a joint response to this latest EHRC announcement, which we will provide a link to in the usual place. So is it incompetence or malice?
Right, so they were just coming out and correcting them and saying, basically, it's not us. They're just waffling. All of our stuff's yet to be reviewed.
Pretty much.
Right, fair. Which is good. It's making sure that, because I feel like, how many times do you rule incompetence until you become the one that's incompetent, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's too many times, too many actions. If they're not fit for purpose, then no, I'm not going to assume that you're acting in good faith, you're just dumb. I'm going to assume that you are deliberately acting in, at very best, dubious faith. But it's very clearly bad faith. I think they're very clearly putting out a statement. I think it's most likely, like, this is entirely speculation. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if someone at a meeting said, can you just comment on this? And they went, yeah, our current position is this. Because that's true. Because that's what they last decided at the last one that we covered.
I see.
And that means that they then get to write up a little thing saying, the EHRC said this at the last meeting. Not the EHRC. They get to say, Ganry said this at the last meeting. And, then it then looks as though the process has worked quicker than anticipated and they've made a decision, which then makes people go, ugh. And just, I think it's just an attempt at demoralization.
I think we did hear about who it might have been that did get the review taken off, but we're not going to say who it is to
No, we
keep
can't
it,
do that.
because it's got to be confidential, unfortunately. But
Yeah, it's the EHRC kind of trying to get out in front and saying, oh, well, you may have heard about this thing, but it's not taking us down. And then it's got everybody, and everybody else is just saying, well, actually.
actually, I think I've got an idea. Like, Faulkner's tenure is ending in the end of November, so they wants to make this look like a big victory to say, oh no, we did our job just fine. So that then if it gets discredited next Ganry meeting, people will start pointing to Mary Ann Stevenson, and it still means that Faulkner can keep the glory of not being the one who had it discreditedness.
Yeah.
Good word. Excellent verbiage there. But also, yeah, probably there's going to be a bit of it. You just kind of hope that Ganry will actually do something, though, or will they just take another bribe?
Yeah. Like, what's it going to take, bros? What's it going to take? Because if you set up these mechanisms to protect against the bodies that we want independently set up to protect and safeguard against people's rights and everything like that, like, obviously that's a good, well-intentioned thing. But if you have these mechanisms set up to prevent those institutions from being captured, from going sour, from becoming counterintuitive, if you don't use them when it is increasingly obvious that that's what's going on, then what is the point of having them?
Yes.
And what's the point of having set up these independent bodies and these human rights bodies if you aren't also going to keep them within the understanding of what actual like respect and protection of human rights is? Because it's call me deeply cynical, but it's just one of those things where like the longer that you go on with this being unchecked and with you ruling that it's fine, the longer that you keep doing that, the more it comes into my mind is you are there to benefit empire and power, and you're not there to benefit any of the rights that you are designed to set up to protect. So does anyone want to stop hearing about the EHRC?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Lovely.
Psych! If you thought that you were just about to get out of Blighty's own Ministry of Love, then I can only apologise as we drag you back in for the 5-minute overtime, because it's time for...
Losers Corner.
I wrote jingle, but I mistyped it, so it just says jungle. So could we just get some sick amen breaks for a second?
Losers Corner. Losers Corner.
Okay, look, as a member of the trans community, I know that there is going to be at least 4 of you that are going to yell at me about the fact that that was more drum and bass than jungle. I made that in like 10 minutes. Just leave me alone.
Yes, that's it. This week, Losers Corner comes in the form of some court reporting by friend of the pod, Reactive Ashleigh, on Blue Sky, as she was following a hearing in the case that the Good Law Project have taken up against the EHRC, following their draft guidance and the way that it is affecting the employment and behaviour of 3 trans and intersex claimants. Now, I'll spare all of them on Shy because it is a hefty thread, which is well worth the read. So we'll link you to that. But I'll give you the highlights. Or should I say lowlights? Highlights include Casey Skillet's frying the commission on a skillet. His argument was that the Supreme Court went out of its way to say that nothing should change for trans people, that the court was not answering the question of whether trans people should be treated as their biological sex, and were specifically avoiding the favouring of cis people's rights. But the EHRC guidance does exactly that, leaving lay people reading the guidance to understand it as trans people must use bathrooms of their biological sex. You tell them, dude. But the juicy, and when I say juicy, I mean infuriating, bits are that the EHRC chief exec, John Kirkpatrick, gave evidence showing that the interim update, which is the guidance, was drafted in less than a day and published within a total of 24 hours. What a fucking stitch-up. And on top of that, claimant made the argument that the EHRC has changed the update over time without following proper procedure, just editing it without a word, which goes against statutory duty, which we can translate quickly to shady as shit and with a stink to match. And, in case you thought this was evil genius at play, Kirkpatrick said that they removed the interim update not because they thought it was incorrect, but because they wanted to put pressure on the minister to adopt said new draft code that they just removed. So yeah, just plain evil then. Further examples of intimidating intellect is when the argument was made about how this guidance infringed upon Article 8 human rights, and the judge asked EHRC, rightly so, what the justification for such limitations of these rights are. The answer given was, quote, "No justification has been given by the state so far," which is a fantastic legal strategy. When pressed on this, EHRC's counsel essentially spoke in circles about there being reasons, but also unintended consequences, and then gave no real committed answer. Eventually, the judge sent him back to look over the sections and assess how rights are engaged in the guidance before court ended. Oof. Now, one word of caution that I really want to highlight. This case is not over. Although this is Losers Corner, we obviously cannot say that the EHRC have literally lost. But the reason why it's here is because this hearing was definitely a loser moment for the EHRC if ever we've seen one.
Yeah, it's always a loser moment when I have a bad day in court, even if we don't know what the outcome of a court is going to be.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, so I think the outcome now is they've the judge is going to make a decision and
Yeah.
announce that decision at a later time, basically. It's not going to be coming out at any point in the next couple of days. So according to the stuff that I've seen on the Good Law Project's website and Blue Sky feed, they'll basically, we'll hear from them. And when we hear from them, I'm sure it'll be quite loud because everyone's going to be talking about it. Because we just can't get cis people to shut the fuck up about trans people.
Right? And meanwhile, we're not allowed to make it too... We're not allowed to be too loud about it ourselves either. So what gives?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it feels... yeah, like, obviously, as we said, case isn't over. But, like, with these revelations in the hearing is what they are, that's loser behavior, babes. This is major loser behavior, babes, actually. So it kind of deserves to be in here. And if things go away where we wouldn't be able to put this in loser's corner after the fact, then we've at least highlighted the pure fucking shenanigans that have been going on. And we can follow up when there is a judgment made. And we'll find out if the judge is a winner or a loser, I guess.
Won't that be fun? So, anybody getting hungry?
Ravenous.
I could go for that. I could definitely go for a little meat.
You could eat a whole ravine.
So, for this week's meat, we have to do a little explaining. Now, a few weeks ago, darling Alyx wrote an opinion article about your party, which said some things that members of your party objected to. So we got in touch with them and asked some questions, so we'll get right into it in a moment. But Alyx, would you like to tell us about your editorial, please? What was it called?
Yeah, what was the title?
Okay, so I made a little article called "Your Party is a Waste of Time." It was basically saying how they hadn't made any decisions on whether they were going to support trans rights or not. There was also some discussions about some senior members inside of your party, and well, I'm basically asking why they were still senior members, because those senior members are still in power there, that it's not good, and I don't think it's worth it.
So, I mean, yeah, it was an opinion article that the central thesis was your party are a waste of time. And if you want to see specifically all of the points that Alyx made, you can go and look it up. Your opinion, you're totally entitled to it. But obviously, understandable. Some people from your party saw it and were like, can we have a conversation about that? So we received an email from Trans Liberation Group, which is a group inside your party. It's a group of your party members operating within your party to basically advocate for trans rights and to try and ensure that the party does not fall to the likes of transphobes, right? And they wanted to come on and talk to us and kind of state their case a little bit, and they initially actually asked for an article, and we thought, how about we give you, in the interest of fairness, the exact same platform that we have given Zach Polanski, that we have given members of the Labour Party, that we have given members of, when we've done the election special, and invite you on to, not just state your case and kind of respond to some of the thoughts that Alyx had, but also to talk about what TLG means for you. We had wanted to have a conversation with people in your party for, well, the second that it came up. Obviously, we want to know what's going on, what's the temperature like, and how is this moving and shaking. So we honestly jumped at the opportunity because we were like, yeah, we'd love to talk to you. We've wanted to talk to you anyway, and we'd like you to come and have a full conversation because we think our listeners definitely deserve to hear from you, because there's a lot of talk about your party, not as much talk from people on the ground in your party. So yes, that's what this interview is, and enjoy. It's me and it's Ashleigh, because we figured it was only fair to give these interviewees a space that is
Alyx free.
well, I don't want to say Alyx free in that kind of way, as if you were like a
I'm
rabid
just kidding.
dog. But, you know, like, it's more because Alyx got a space to say exactly what she wanted, how she wanted to say it, without any challenge. And we figured it was fair to give them a space that doesn't have someone who wrote an opinion article saying you're a waste of time, because that inherently kind of invites a bit more of a debate energy, and we didn't really want that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
roll tape.
Roll tape.
Okay, so we have the wonderful Rosa and Sylvia with us here. They're both she, her pronouns. And we are, well, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, actually, and tell us who you are and where you're from and why you're here.
Yeah, I don't mind going first. I'm Rosa, she, her, and I'm on the steering committee of a group called Trans Liberation Group, and we're a group organising within your party. And we were invited on this podcast to sort of share our perspective of what trans liberation will look like within your party and the work that our group is doing, and also to respond to some of the things that have been said about your party. And I'm sure we'll get into it further down the line. Yeah, I'll pass over to Sylvia.
Oh, hi there. I'm Sylvia, she, her pronouns. I'm from Manchester, but I'm currently based in Sheffield, and I'm also a member of Trans Liberation Group. I'm also involved with other groups in your party. Of course, I'm a your party member, such as the Democratic Socialists, and I'm also involved with Iris 21, and I'm also an editor of Ed Magazine, which is a socialist magazine and publisher. So yeah, that's me.
Lovely stuff. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, wearing your many hats. It is in a good way, right? You want people who join political parties to be engaged and involved in those parties, right? So, on the subject then, what about your party has spoken to you over maybe any other political party?
For me, it's sort of I've been involved in politics for a long time now. Like, I'm only 24, but I first joined a political party at 15. I've been around organised politics for close to a decade now, and I've seen lots of different ways of doing things. And your party, it's something new to me. If you think about like what an ideal political party would be, if you could say start from scratch, there's no society that exists, and you get to just build the perfect political party, what would that look like to you? And you would say, okay, it would be member-led. You would say it would be democratic. You would say that the leaders are readily accountable to the members. You would say that members decide policy. You say that you sort of no party monarchy, no kings or queens. And that's kind of what attracted me to your party, because I was kind of sick and tired of being a trans person in these established parties. And the way that you get your politics to work in these established parties is you either claw yourself to the top of these parties, or you attach yourself to the coattails of someone else that has managed it. And political engagement in these sort of traditional parties becomes a case of who can I advocate back for that will advocate on my behalf. So it's not about elevating yourself, it's not about elevating the members, it's about trying to find someone to pin sort of your political views onto and hoping that they reciprocate. So when I was in the Labour Party and I was a member of Labour for Trans Rights, the Labour Party has like organised sections, one of those being LGBT Labour, and they're sort of the official voice of LGBT people within the Labour Party. They're the only ones that the top people listen to. Labour for Trans Rights was just an organised group within the Labour Party. And we couldn't get access to anyone on that top table. You know, we'd be trying to talk to like Annalise Dodds when she was the Equalities Minister, just any of the MPs. And it was like, trying to become like a lobbyist. And then we also couldn't do anything within LGBT Labour because they had some very anti-democratic processes. They would hold their AGMs in a pub in 3 days' notice in the middle of nowhere, things like that.
Right.
So
That's really accessible democracy.
It is. So when your party comes along and we say it's member-led, it's democratic, it's going to be up for people to sort of make it what we want it to be. You know, we've got a party without a name, with no policies. and it's a brilliant opportunity that I just have never seen before. But that's what really drew me to it. Also, just like as a socialist, it's this idea of this like mass left wing party that we've all been wanting for years. We've all been waiting for something to sort of come from the ashes of Corbynism. And there's been all these like little sort of quite insular left wing parties over the last few years. But this looks like the real opportunity to unite them. So yeah, I think I have to summarize it's a new way of doing politics. It's sort of like a very positive and ideal way, a democratic way of doing politics, and a sort of way of uniting a lot of well-meaning people that just hadn't had that structure to organizing within before.
Yeah, so I think I didn't come from like a mass party background. That I was quite involved with like a lot of on and off in a lot of kind of small Marxist groups over the years and small LGBT plus groups over the years, including Action for Trans Health, which I think was one of the first experiences I had of like engagements with democratic procedures, as flawed as it could be at times, such as trying to do consensus decision making with over 200 people. It was still an opportunity to realize just kind of what the potentials are with democratic organizing, not just within Action for Trans Health, but what we were aiming for with like radical democratic trans healthcare. So that was always a big moment for me. And that kind of mid 2010s period when there was that kind of upsurge and that kind of trans organizing in that manner, in between the kind of more Marxist aspects where they weren't really aware of trans liberation. There was always this kind of dismissal of it. And it just got very alienating. A lot of these kind of small Marxist groups are very big push, like really push newspaper selling and doing stalls, not considering people's access needs or like capacity. So that kind of stuff just felt very like it wasn't going anywhere. And I think even with your party, that when it first formed, I was like cautiously optimistic. And I think like even then it would definitely vary depending on the day. I joined a bit later, but I think the reason for such was I think just seeing like this mass socialist party or a moment to build something like that was quite intriguing. And then when I was at the World Transformed in Manchester, I think being in a space where, I'm talking about a new party formation, but also being around people where they're talking about this in a way that I don't think I've really seen in the British left as long as I've been around in it. In particular, it kind of links to what Rosa says about that kind of active socialist identity. I think with the World Transformed, it was a moment where it wasn't just that, but also anti-imperialism was being brought to the front in the British left. And I think it was how your party could be seen as an opportunity to build on this. And it's also part of, as we probably get to in a little bit, as Trans Liberation Group, that we have a united we united with other groups on a minimum political program, which also includes that. But yeah, and then I think it was again being around other trans people who shared a very similar socialist, anti-imperialist identity was quite a nice thing to have. And when we did the trans feminism panel, or at least when I showed up at it, it was just like so refreshing to be around all these other trans people who had this kind of a politics that did remind me of Action for Trans Health or aspects of it, and that kind of sense of like taking those politics that have been built up over the years, as well as the rise of trans Marxism in a lot of spheres, and just kind of like we're kind of building this now. So I kind of feel like it's an opportunity right now to see where that develops, and hopefully can be done in a way that continues to be socialist, democratic, and member-led.
Yeah, that sounds really good. So just to understand that, is that was that trans feminism panel a panel that was put on by your party?
No, that was at the World Transformed that, but
right, yes, okay. With you being called Trans Liberation Group, it's pretty clear what you exist for, what your main goal is within your party. But what explicitly are your demands?
So our demands were decided democratically by the group. One of our sort of key demands right now is we are organising within your party for the time being. So like our demand zero is a party for everyone. And this is kind of part of our wider sort of tactic, our wider structure, is we believe that the average person in the British left is not a transphobe. We believe the average person is an ally, or at the very worst, just ambivalent, probably doesn't know much about trans people. And we recognise that the tactics of transphobic people, of TERFs, is to sort of rely on their sort of funding, on their fame, on their power, to become like a very vocal minority and embed themselves within sort of party structures. So even though there might be like two turfs in a party, if they get to the top of the party, it's really sucks, doesn't it? Uh, s- yeah, so we actually, we thought about this quite theoretically, and we thought we need a party for everyone. And so all our demands, our initial demands around the party are about a democratic party. So it's things like requiring all party representatives to be bound by a party program. And the idea is to have some sort of people's whip, where elected representatives are answerable to work within their local group, within their local party, and easily recallable. So that gives them sort of, um, a need to stay on track, so to speak. Um, we want like a transparent disciplinary process to prevent bigotry and discrimination, and we want that to be overseen by a democratically elected committee that would be separate from the executive of the party. So it avoids any sort of political interference with those disciplinary matters. We want to ensure that trans people are represented through like a democratic structure within the party, and we want our voices to be heard. We want to be given the room to organise, lead our own liberation. Nothing about us without us is a very common call. And we'd also want quite a systematic political education scheme. So it's like compulsory for all elected representatives. So those people that, again, are maybe ignorant about trans people, not necessarily anti-trans, just don't know enough about them, they come to understand why trans liberation is important and how that fits into a wider class struggle. Sylvia, do you want to go through some of the more like general policy focused demands?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of kind of like the policies, I was actually in Manchester when I think there's a group called the Greater Manchester Left Caucus, and I'm not really in that because I'm not in Manchester, but I went to this meeting before they kind of formed, and that was one of my first encounters with the Trans Liberation Group, and I saw the demands, and I think it is like very like if we summarize our three demands, it's very much one to legalize trans existence, two to reform the broken system, and three healthcare that works. And I think with the legalized trans existence, I think what really stood out to me was it's not only things like, amending the Equality Act to undo the damage that's the Supreme Court ruling has caused, making it clear about what sex refers to as a person's current lived sex and adding gender identity as a protected characteristic, but also ensuring that gender critical beliefs aren't treated as protected beliefs. But it's also things that I think were somewhat unique, I feel like, within party politics, like enshrining the right to self-identification of gender, non-binary gender recognition, which is uh, uh, but also like particularly one that I think that is going to hopefully emerge in not only your party but also in other parties like the Greens is kind of moving towards kind of abolishing gender markers from official documentation. So it's kind of like not so much like we're just going to make things a bit better, but it's also like things like changing things in a way that kind of demonstrates more of a radical imagination, as well as demands about scrapping the like EHRC and the introduction of ID cards, like scrapping that as well, ending hormone testing of hormone levels on women athletes, as well as rejecting any attempts to restrict trans people's rights in public bathrooms and other gendered spaces. As well as it kind of links to the kind of political education a bit, but more on a wider scale about like reforming and overhauling relationship and sex education guidance, bans on conversion therapy. But I think this one did stand out to me a bit, the kind of enshrining in UK law the right to privacy over your assigned gender at birth and trans status, and things like that, and the kind of like the kind of that kind of aspect of it really stood out to me. Um, as well as like abolishing trans panic legal defenses. But one of the things that I like about Trans Liberation Group is how, and this is what we talked about when we were in Manchester, was that we were saying that it was kind of like a trans politics that reflects a wider struggle. So we have in our demands like to decriminalize all sex work, as well as like ensuring that they can like, to regulate sex workers' workplaces through employment law so they can unionize and self-organize, as well as reversing the cuts to PIP and overhauling the system that puts and make sure disabled people are at the heart of decision making. The minimal political program we have with the other groups also really stresses disability liberation. So that is something I think that is really important. And in Sheffield, they actually, when they did a regional assembly, we get into that a bit more later, but they actually also advocated for accessibility for all meetings, and that was a very popular demand. So that aspect is something that's been really noticeable and popular. But then on the final demand on like healthcare that works, I think some of these aspects I think if it, are very reminiscent of what like the Greens are doing right now. So like the end of desegregation of trans healthcare, making HRT a right for all adult people with no legal restrictions, informed consent, over the counter, abolishing the GIC. But also like legally enshrining the right to transition, which I thought was a really like again stood out to me. This kind of approach that I don't think I've really seen a lot in like mass parties, and even in like trans spaces, it's kind of nice and refreshing to kind of be kind of looking more towards like not so much our rights and just making them a little bit better for everyone, like making things a bit better for ourselves, but kind of making it, improving everything for everyone. Like it's that thing where trans healthcare, like better trans healthcare is better healthcare for everybody. So I think that was one of the appeals, and particularly, like I said, this kind of approach on removing legal gender markers and like on documentation, as well as expanding the range of like gender affirming services, and kind of very similar to the Greens demand of like primary healthcare and like also ensuring that trans people are like involved in all of this as well. It's very that kind of reflects some of that kind of autonomous trans organizing outside of political parties that's like kind of still there here, but also putting it within a party apparatus that can like ideally then be used in mass politics and really build something that helps deconstruct all the harmful narratives that exist in Britain surrounding trans communities.
So just to very quickly and briefly follow up, I know that, obviously we recognise that the EHRC is not fit for purpose here at What the Trans. We recognise, that there are other groups and the like that have done the same, GLP. I noticed you mentioned abolishing the EHRC there. What would you recommend as a way to still keep a watchdog on protecting rights? Because obviously the EHRC right now is not fit for purpose, but there is still potentially a need for an independent body that ensures that rights are protected, yeah?
So EHRC, obviously, it's all centered around an Equality Act, and it's an Equality Act that is kind of embedded within like a liberal idea of rights, and it's kind of like a negative idea of liberty. It's freedom from discrimination, but not necessarily the freedom to live your best life. And I think the Equality Act definitely as a stopgap measure can be amended and sort of made better. But eventually we're going to want a piece of legislation to supersede that, which better enshrines things. But again, we're not just an electoral party, we're not just a parliamentary party. There's wider things we can do, more cultural things within the workplace, within communities, that all sort of feed into that. But I understand, legislation will play some of the role of that. We did have a big discussion about whether we did want to say abolish the HRC, because that was a thing that a member brought up. They said, if we say abolish it, the first thing they'll ask us is, and what do we think we should replace it with? And what we've committed to is sort of, after your party founding conference, we're going to go back through our demands. We're actually fully committed to refounding as a group. So just because of the short time frame, we've got like an interim governance structure. Still brilliant structure, still very democratic, but we know it can be made better and can be expanded upon. And as part of that, we're going to revisit these demands. We're going to revisit our governance. And what we're starting to do now is we're starting to create sort of an internal debate and a dialogue. So we're looking into hosting a platform for people to submit articles, to submit motions, to submit discussion. Think of like a trans Iskra or something similar to that. All these sort of great political minds that all come from slightly different elements of the left. And we set them a topic, and then we have 10 different solutions from 10 different areas of the left. We come together, we look at those policies, we debate them, we unpick them. And it's sort of through that refinement that we're going to be able to say, okay, we've got a system that works better than the HRC.
Yeah, I was going to quickly say that it is actually also on the TLG demands. It actually says not like that to scrap the Equality and Human Rights Commission because it's broken and not fit for purpose, and it should be replaced with an equalities body that actually protects human rights. So it's quite preliminary, but there's like definitely a desire to consider what we would replace it with, and ideally with trans people at the helm of that as well.
Yeah, it's similar to that classic issue that you get when you talk about defunding or abolishing police or prisons. People always want to know, well, how are you going to handle all of that occurs with it? And there's normally a lot more reasonable answers out there than what people would first think when they panic and go, how do you overhaul a system that big and a thing that massive? how do you want to achieve those demands? What kind of strategies are you looking at?
I guess obviously your party has a lot of democratic avenues right now. They've had the regional assemblies, we've got a big founding conference, and there's loads of debate, loads of brilliant like groups that have come out of the woodwork with your party. Like Democratic Socialist of your party was one of the that's organising for popular power. All these brilliant groups. So we've sort of had a strategy of organising around regional assemblies and bringing through amendments quite heavily focused on party democracy um, and things like that. But we're also trying to get us auditioned for this founding conference in November. We're also trying to create a big social media presence. Again, we think our demands are very reasonable. We think you don't have to be a plugged-in leftist to understand them. And I think if we get these on a flyer in front of someone outside a conference hall in Liverpool, I think they'll probably vote for them. And yeah, it's sort of raising that consciousness, making those very more esoteric efforts within those like assembly spaces, but appealing to a wider audience as well.
Oh, yeah. I think that's quite a good point that about kind of appealing to the wider range of people because, yeah, your party, I think now is about 50,000 members, which is not as many as the initial sign up by any means, but I think it would still make it one of the largest socialist parties in Britain since like the 40s. So, but what that also says is that a lot of the people in it at the minute are very active, like have activist backgrounds. They're more the activist base because it is the starting of establishing a party. But in that time, we need to be building that kind of like politics that appeals to everybody and also ensures that like, you know, we can consistently be remain democratic and socialist. Because yeah, some of these regional assemblies and discussions on democracy can be quite overwhelming for some people or quite dry, but like they are also really important because without that, we're not going to be able to build, like I said, we've got to have demand zero or we're not going to really develop anything.
Moving on a little bit, I guess, to the wider experience. What has been your experience of the attitude towards trans people in your party and obviously within the TLG?
Yeah, so TLG is obviously an absolute brilliant space, trans-led, all allies. It is by far, like, of every organisation I've put work into over the last 10 years, the easiest and most enjoyable org I've ever been involved with. Within the wider your party, we've had some like brilliant allies. Like I said, I think all these groups arguing for democracy in one way or another, they all want to lift each other. So we hosted a brilliant event where we had about 10 different factions come in. I called it like the factions carousel, and we got to listen to each of these groups' different demands, and they've reciprocated it with us before. We've had a lot of help, like I said, from Democratic Socialists of your party. We're sharing each other's posts, we're raising each other up. Just today or yesterday, a disability group within your party was formed, and already we're sharing their stuff, they're sharing our stuff, and that's been brilliant. So within like the groups and the organised factions, we've just had generally a brilliant response. I think within like the wider left, there are some sort of older sects, some older Marxist groups that tend to have a bit of an older membership base. They've been a bit insular over the last few years. But even then, they've been engaging with us within Unity talks. We've had meetings with them. Again, I don't want to disclose it because it's not our place to disclose everything that goes on. But even within sections of the left that you might have think historically have been outside of sort of like the progressive left, they have been massively open to us, and we've had the chance to make our argument. And that's what we want. We want to be able to make our argument. And I think that's been really good. Sylvia's can probably tell you a bit more about regional groups, branches, things like that. From what I understand, it's a mixed bag. Sadly, where I live, I don't have a branch, so I can't speak firsthand on it.
Yeah, so I'm in Sheffield, which is kind of an interesting place, regardless, because one, it has a very significant your party presence that is quite particular, as well as also having quite a strong green presence, where it has over 3,000 members. I think it has 14 councillors, 3 seats up for grabs at the next election. So that obviously really creates this huge contrast. The early days definitely felt were very online. It was a bit haphazard because it was so new and everyone was getting started up. There was people who'd been expelled from the Greens or left the Greens who tried to join your party, but they got removed. I think on the first the first meeting I think they had in Sheffield, they passed a resolution, massive majority supporting trans rights. But yeah, and then at the regional assemblies, I was a facilitator, but the South Yorkshire Regional Assembly was quite different. So they was I think it was almost all entirely organised by people in South Yorkshire, and they did things like dotocracy. So they tried to. They had what's called the Sheffield Declaration, which shares a lot of similarities on democracy, transparency, disciplinary procedures, and accessibility. But I was facilitating, and like I said, the group I facilitated included trans people, included young people, definitely did lean older, and like people from these kind of older left-wing groups. But everyone was really receptive, people really engaged. I think people were aware of like kind of the issues of like transphobia and kind of ensuring that trans people are represented. But I didn't really get to say as much I'd like because obviously I was facilitating. But it definitely felt like quite a welcoming atmosphere. Like, you know, it didn't. I think it was just a good experience to be able to be in a space where I could be like helping lead discussions on this. But yeah, it's been I think it's been surprisingly good when I've actually kind of got out there a bit, if that makes sense.
Why were the Greens removed after trying to join your party?
Oh, sorry, to clarify that. No, these people were expelled from the Greens already, like, or left the Greens because of their views on, like, because of their transphobia, and they tried to join your party, or tried to join these chats, but I think they've been removed since. But I think they took time because people had to like decide these like interim groups, because it's quite an active and organised branch, Sheffield. So it was kind of like they had to get together and decide whether we should like remove them or not, which is a bit admittedly kind of be frustrating, but like it is, like I said, it got done, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what are your hopes and expectations for the Your Party conference that'll be happening at the end of this month?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, first and foremost. I think we're all aware of some of the issues that your party has had in sort of getting its membership together. It's took a few attempts to launch, but I don't think that's any reason to write off your party. And I think once we're all in that hall together, it's going to be like a really fantastic day. And a year down the line, we'll forget we ever had these issues with the launch. Again, I hope we get enough time to speak. I hope there's room for meaningful debate. But that is honestly my one fear at the moment is that I don't want it to turn into a rally. We have enough rallies on the left. What we don't have is enough debates. And I think it's really important that the membership that does get sortition to be there gets the chance to speak, gets the chance to debate these founding documents. So another thing is with your party, we've got this online constitutional tool where any member can submit an amendment. And that small work we're doing within TLG and these other left groups is we're coordinating what amendments we want to get selected to be debated at conference. So like a good conference to me is I go down on the Friday night, go to a fun rally, get to meet lots of people, get to hand out a lot of leaflets, get in the conference hall Saturday morning, see that the amendments that TLG has put forward have been selected for debate, encourage everyone to vote for them, they get passed unanimously, and we win the whole lot. That's not going to happen, it's politics, but it does sort of give an idea of what we want to do. We want to go down there, we want to be active on the floor, we want to be sharing our arguments. And I think there is a high chance that similar amendments to ours, or possibly our own amendments, will get picked up for debate, just because of the tenacity of the groups in proposing them. And I think there will be something to build from in November.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a lot similar as well. Just like I'm actually not going to be there because I'm at Sheffield Transformed, so I'm going to be a bit on the sidelines, unfortunately. Well, I'll be selling books with Eb, but that'll and also be engaging more with the local stuff. So yeah, but I think like I really just hope for the best for it. I hope that at the very least we really emphasise democracy and member-led policies. I can't expect everything instantly, but I hope that the apparatus is established that allows people to build on these politics and then carries on into the next year.
Yeah, just following on from that, one of the big demands that's going around right now is for this conference to make provisions for another conference committee, and that would hold a second Your Party conference within 12 months' time, and that would be made up of delegates from branches rather than a sortition, and it would be sort of a less factional group overseeing the organisation of it. So it wouldn't be down to these independent MPs, it wouldn't be the Peace and Justice Project or Jeremy Corbyn's close allies. It would be a separately elected group to hold an even better conference where we can get even more policy passed. So this first conference is just about putting those democratic foundations in place to build upon.
When we've specifically talked about some of the more well-known people within your party, so we saw on social media that some members of the Trans Liberation Group have recently met with Zara Sultana. Have you had any contact with the other prospective Your Party MPs?
Yeah, so for us, again, we reject the notion that these people, by sake of being MPs, are any more important than the average member of your party. But at the same time, we do recognise that a lot of these have a platform, they have a big following. And I think what makes our group different is we've not endorsed Zara Sultana. Zara Sultana has endorsed us. And that's quite a big difference there. It's not saying we've attached ourselves to someone that we think could be a good leader because they believe in similar things to us. They've gone and promoted us and given us the platform and the voice and the space to do so. And I think that's brilliant. We are talking to various people within your party. I don't know how much I can say about this now, but there was a recent defection from the Scottish Greens, and we are looking at having a meeting with well, it's Ellie Gomersall. I don't know why I'm being obtuse about it. Yeah, so Ellie Gomersall was within the Scottish Green Party, defected to your party quite publicly, very publicly a trans person within politics, and they were very happy. She was very happy to meet with us in TLG, and we're going to have a meeting to discuss what that collaboration could look like down the line. Yeah, but we're not here chasing endorsements. That's not what TLG is about. TLG is about, again, sort of this party Republican mode of thinking. But we obviously love to get platformed, and I think that's brilliant, and that was great of Zara to do that. And obviously, we do share a lot of politics. Zara's launched her own sort of variation of what a democratic Your Party will look like, and that is very much in line with a lot of what TLG is demanding. But yeah, it's not something we've been trying to do too much of, to be honest. It's not like we've been going around all the MPs, will you sign our pledge, will you do this? Because again, that gives them the power. It's if you're asking someone to do something for you, it automatically positions them as being above you, and that's not what we want to do.
Fair, very fair. So let's get into the choppier waters, so to speak. Obviously, there was that opinion article that Alyx wrote about how she feels regarding the place that your party is in. It's the reason why you reached out to us, because you wanted to discuss some of that. So first of all, I guess cheeky little plug to our audience. If you're only listening to the podcast, go check out that article, because I'm not going to read you a transcript. But what are the title of the article was "Your Party is a Waste of Time," and it kind of essentially was that statement, which you have thoughts and opinions on why that's not the case. Here is your space to go off and explain that to the audience.
Yeah, I feel a wee bit on the spot at the minute, but I think it was when reading the article, I think it felt like I feel like there was that kind of sense of like when you're involved with your party and groups like Trans Liberation Group or any others, that we've definitely witnessed these developments that are more positive and like more like kind of, okay, these things are happening. And even within that, that really depends whereabouts we're based as well. So, it just, different branches admittedly have different outcomes and different experiences. But I think for me, it's like, regardless of what party it is about kind of like being quite active and engaged, but in a way that respects people's access needs, which again, stressing disability liberation and accessible meetings. But I think a lot of it just is dependent primarily on whereabouts you are, what's going on. And with Trans Liberation Group, it's obviously more national, but we have people all over the UK, including in Scotland and Wales. And I feel a bit like it's kind of worthy of our time because we're trying to work on this kind of socialist politics, which has been quite lacking, or at least been quite fragmented over the years. And I think it's better to try and build something that could, better to build something now and try and see what happens with it than maybe to kind of try and just give up and then kind of let these voices get more embedded within your party and then let more and then if there's no trans people at conference then you're going to get these other people who are going to push policies that are trans antagonistic or they just don't go far enough, they just don't really reflect what trans liberation should be in a socialist party. And I think it's that kind of thing where it's a lot of people in your party are aware of problems. It was a bit of a shit show starting off, but these things happen, and that it is very noticeable. Like with other individuals within your party who are quite high in high positions, it's not like everyone's going, oh, but this is fine. It's no, I think that's the desire of conference and the desire for democracy is about that. And I kind of again basically I'd rather give it a go than kind of be gleeful at the destruction of something like this and then miss out and then have a bit of a vacuum again. Like when I mentioned Action for Trans Health, sometimes when these things just move on or they kind of get a lot smaller or whatever, it kind of feels like you hold on to those politics and take those things elsewhere, but then you've kind of lost something. Then that vacuum is kind of right now with the potential reform government in 2029 is really kind of dangerous, and we want to kind of make sure that we can do something.
Whoop, 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 1 second. Just a brief point of order. We did record this interview before Adnan Hussein resigned from your party. However, we've decided to keep these next couple of questions in the interview because even though they directly relate to him, they're also still very relevant for anyone else in the party that would get to a similar position of power or would have similar perspectives as he has. So continue now. Thank you. Bye.
This is where we're kind of getting into the choppy stuff, okay? So in the founding statement of the TLG, you specifically mention revulsion at comments like Adnan Hussein and, quote, others like him. How do you think your party should address hostility towards minorities and towards people like Craig Murray and his action and the role that he took in the Alyx Salmond case, for example, and Mark Sawatka, who is a spouse to Ruth Sawatka, who was a co-founder of A Women's Place UK. Having these people involved in your party to start with might be, well, okay, where do you come in on that? What are your thoughts?
I'm glad you mentioned this actually, because it was brought up at our all-member meeting last night. So we have comrades in Edinburgh, and one of the questions there was, what should we do about Craig Murray? Obviously, as a group, we are repulsed at his rap sheet, the Alyx Salmond stuff. And again, my big belief is that we have so many good members within your party. We have so many brilliant young socialists that we don't need to rely on these sort of tired old names that have got a long history of dodgy actions. And that's sort of where my sort of party republicanism comes in. It's we shouldn't be building around big names. We should be elevating each other and turning each other into these organizers. But I think it comes onto a wider point as well, which is still a debate within your party, which is its relation to electoralism. So the reason that Max Vodka and his wife come up, the reason that Craig Murray's come up, is because Scotland and Wales obviously have their regional assembly, their Scottish Parliament elections coming up, and people are thinking ahead of, oh, we've got to stand a candidate, who could we get on a short notice? And it's my personal opinion that we shouldn't contest those elections. We're not in a position right now where we can have good candidates that are vetted. We're not in a position to have a people's whip. We're not in a position to have a socialist in office committee to coordinate national movements. And more importantly, there isn't the base within Britain right now for a socialist to come into office. So if we did end up, winning every single seat in the Scottish Parliament, all that's going to do is give us the sort of right to administer cuts. And we don't want to do that. And until we have a base of people that are willing to fight for socialist policies, um, there's questions about how much we should be engaging in electoral activity over base building. So yeah, absolutely repulsed by Craig Murray. Deeply saddened at the prevalence of Max Sawalka and how he has gone unchallenged by some. But again, these are stuff that's come up in discussions. The fact that we had a comrade bring it up is something that we are like working on strategies to avoid. And it might well be that Craig Murray becomes the candidate. But we know, given enough time, someone with that level of tactlessness throughout his political career is going to mess up. And that's when we can say, look, we need to really be thinking about who within our party we want to elevate to be spokespeople. And it shouldn't be people like him.
So far, the understanding on how do you solve a problem like Craig Murray, for example, is to avoid right now the electoral side of things, because that's not where you're in a position for anyway. And if any of them get to being actual candidates with actual sway in the party, that they're guaranteed to fuck up, that's when we get to come in and make our case. Is that kind of the strategy so far?
I mean, we should definitely make the case before that as well. We should be vocal in why we don't believe these people should be. Like, I think every single person should be facing mandatory reselection, even the independent MPs. They should have no de facto right to be our MPs until the members say so. But yeah, I think if it was the local elections were 2 years away, the regional assembly elections were more years away, this wouldn't be an issue. People would come to their senses. But there's just something about election time that drives certain people on the left to abandon all
the prospect of power.
Yeah, and we need to avoid that. We need to be cleverer than that, and we need to be better than that.
So I'm sorry, just to push back a little bit on that. So Adnan Hussein is going to be the person who gets to decide who some of those candidates will be. Is that how would you go about resisting him?
I don't see what sway Adnan Hussein would have over who any of the candidates are. We don't have a party structure right now. We don't have any. All our branches are proto branches. The branches should be selecting who their candidates are. As the way I see it, no MP should be on the central executive committee, and that's something that I'm proposing. So it sort of avoids these concentrations of power within the big names. We've got like a long list of ways to avoid Adnan Hussein having any way in the selection process. And if you want to read more about that, Democratic Socialists have a full alternative constitution, and we're going to be arguing for a lot of similar things to them.
Yeah, I think also Democratic Socialists have an alternative political statement, which again really stresses being against transphobia and things like other forms of oppression as well. So again, a lot of it definitely is leading up to conference, because it is definitely a concern that the independent alliance and the kind of roles they have, and Savotka, and the kind of I think when I've heard about this stuff, at least in Scotland and Wales, I've been a bit of a maybe more of a this is not good, this is a really bad, this is not great, this association is not going to help. But the first thing I think of is it's kind of not. And being in England, I'm a bit oh, that's kind of Scotland and Wales and how they develop that, and the regional politics there are so different. But I do agree that it'd be great to have after conference a disciplinary procedure established to ensure that any political representatives, any views they have that go against what we decide at conference, which should be transliberatory politics, or at least something close to that. They are bound to that, and I think this conference is binding as well to all political representatives, whatever happens. So it's a lot of it kind of feels a bit keep saying oh, wait till conference, which I can be quite frustrating, because it's it kind of feels a bit these people are merging now, and what that says, and who's interested in that, who gets drawn away from that. That kind of leads me, I think I think the only thing we can do is just kind of agitate and just kind of keep at it. And I know some people kind of see that as why do we have to agitate for this? And it's because there's no political party that has ever started perfectly. There's no wonderful party that's come out immediately, if that makes sense. It's kind of it is a struggle, and it's been like I said, a bit of a shit show at the start. But considering that, I'm actually quite surprised at how it's going on, and like particularly the work of TLG and other factions has been like quite inspiring to see that people kind of keep at it despite it.
So I feel as though obviously there is a massive point of comparison between the Greens and your party at the minute. And when, it's been mentioned a couple of times already, reminiscence to the Greens in the ways that you're approaching some of these things. So I'm going to ask a question that's kind of blunt, but I think it might kind of get to the heart of what some of the people in our audience and people listening might want to know, which is, in your opinion, why should trans people engage in a fight to be heard in a political party when there is another that is already clear and settled on the matter?
Yeah, it's something that we think about quite a lot. I will say the Greens where it only really became settled quite recently, and I think it's fair to say that people within the Green Party had to fight for that, and I think that's a fair enough assertion to make. For me, it's your party is a socialist party, right? It's going to be a socialist party. The Greens have got some really good policies, and I wish them all the best, but they're not socialists at heart. It's not. There's areas where they let down socialists, and I think, and I can get into that more in a minute, but I think it's also about what you think the party should be. It's like when I introduced myself and I talked about, what is an ideal political party. The Greens have a very traditional model of doing politics right now. They have a media-savvy leader in Zach Polanski, who is almost the total face of the Greens right now. If you ask people to name a member of the Green Party, they'll say Zach Polanski. If you ask them to name a Green MP, who knows? It is very, very Zach Polanski focused. And that kind of fits into this top-down approach of doing politics. I back Zach. Zach said this. Zach went on TV and did a brilliant appearance on the last leg. Zach did a funny TikTok dance. And it's really great for how politics in the UK functions. We've got a system of politics where it's presidential. You have sort of two men arguing with each other at a little box in Westminster. You have Ian Hislop and Have I Got News for You making jokes about the party. And Zach's brilliant for that. But it doesn't develop the party. And the reason I've got issues with this is because I was a member of Labour within the Jeremy Corbyn years. And Jeremy Corbyn was a great leader. He believed in most things that I believed in. But he had a whole cult of personality around him. He headlined Glastonbury,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. But what's Jeremy Corbyn's legacy within the Labour Party? He didn't do anything to democratise the branches. He didn't do anything to democratise their executive committee. Didn't do anything to empower the membership. Didn't win any elections. And then you have to go, okay, so Zach Polanski, he might be this brilliant person, but what's actually happening within the Green Party? Do you think the Green Party are having debates on how their executive committee should be run right now? Do you think they're having arguments through journals about the merits of sortition as a way to elect conference members? Do you think they're developing an anti-imperialist, anti-NATO politics? And that requires like a heavy level of commitment within a political party. And the best political parties are heavily engaged. And I just don't know if there's a level of engagement within the Greens that you see within your party.
Yeah. So I think the thing I was going to think of with Polanski, there's a really good podcast that I would recommend called Life of the Party podcast, which talks a lot about the developments in your party. I think one of the hosts is a dual member of your party in the Greens at the moment. And I like the fact that they have a very they really kind of, I think I first listened to it, I was kind of like quite impressed at the kind of discussions and the kind of like nuance that it was doing. I thought it was really really welcome to see. But I think the differences for myself is partially, yes, this kind of desire for an active socialist and anti-imperialist identity. But it's also this thing that I think they talked about in this podcast about kind of similar about Corbynism, is that people are fans of Polanski, but are they fan of the Greens? And yes, he got 84% of the vote. I know it was a quite a high turnout for the Greens, even though it was still in like the 38%. But again, it's that kind of the next steps for me. Like, joining is the first step of the Greens, but what is the next step? And as much as they are now actively listening to trans people, and they have had disciplinary procedures that have expelled transphobes like Alyx, I think it's kind of like in different areas it'll just depend. Maybe one area, a green area, might not have that same politics of Polanski. So it's kind of you have to do the work a bit yourself and go a bit beyond the kind of social media, if that makes sense, and kind of not. So like in Sheffield, it's kind of a huge green presence, but my area doesn't even have a ward. So, and when I went to a meeting recently, it was very electoral, and I think that's another thing is that I don't want to focus just on electoral politics. I get why they do, um, but I want to kind of build something that kind of engages with like community presence, with even outside of parties. There's a group in Sheffield called Cooperation Sheffield that do a lot on this. Um, yeah. But I think the other thing is, I'm trying to think of it now. I think it was that it's also how they're going to deal with the influx of members. Like it's the starting point, like I said, and how that might change their strategies, like their target to win strategy, as well as how local funding will be redistributed. When I was at the Sheffield Greens meeting, they were actually, they have over 3,000 members now, but I was quite surprised they asked for donations just because the local funding isn't getting like brought back in as much, which is one of the kind of desires of of Trans Liberation Group and other factions to ensure that not only do elected representatives have a worker's wage, but also that but also to ensure local branches get like I think it's like 50% of like funding, so it's kind of like in the local area, so not 50% altogether, but something that basically ensures that local branches can have enough means to build this stuff. So I'm really kind of curious about how that'll develop. Aside from yes, the kind of discussions on anti-imperialism, I know that on the other podcast episodes with the Ash Ruth in particular, I think I remember the point about like the Greens is a broad church, like so there's groups like Greens Organise, which is kind of like the left wing pressure group. So I know that's one thing that people bring up, that why not just get involved with Greens Organise? And I think a lot of that is, again, it depends on activity of primarily. But I think the way I describe it is that the Greens are still an eco-populist party that just happens to have socialists in it. Whilst what we're trying to do with Trans Liberation Group and other factions and within your party is one with an active socialist and anti-imperialist identity and politics, that also I think is also building a inclusive culture, inclusive kind of revolutionary culture as well, connecting with like local regional histories and forms of radicalism like that as well.
So previously, Zara Sultana has described your party as a sexist boys club. So how does that fit into this being a party for people of marginalised genders if one of the people who's been involved right at the start has gone on record and described it like that?
I'd highly recommend reading some articles by Archie Woodrow and Prometheus, and he's done a really good job of detailing the sort of fractions that went on around the founding of your party. I'll try my best to summarise things as I understand them, being from someone that wasn't in that room and is relying on second-hand information. So there's two main factions were involved at the sort of start of your party. There's sort of the Independent Alliance / Peace and Justice Party / Collective. So that's Jeremy Corbyn, the Independent Alliance MPs, Carrie Murphy, and a few other individuals like that. On the other half, there was sort of the Memorandum of Understanding group, which was like a company set up to help establish a party. So you had people like Beth Winter, Jamie O'Driscoll, a few other individuals from the left. And we can only fathom how long discussions about starting a new political party had been going on for. These people have been in the sort of political wilderness for a few years now. From what I understand, there's quite different views on how to do it. One side favoured it to be sort of like a loose alliance, kind of like the Independent Alliance, sort of uniting local political groups. And another side wanted to have a mass membership left party. They got very heated, I can imagine. And yeah, from what Zara said at the time, it was a case of the sort of Corbyn Independent Alliance faction, which is all men, won out on some of those debates and sort of forced into like the membership launch and all things like that. I will say it's horrible that that happens. I've obviously been involved in like quite agitational politics before. As a trans person, you get all sorts of things thrown at you, and like solidarity to anyone that's having to go through that. This is why I don't want any of them involved at the top table. This is why we're a party Republican. Thank you so much for dragging us to a founding, but please leave after this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Valid. So in the event that your party does not choose to respect trans rights, say it's a worst case scenario, right? The people that we really don't want, they get into the top, the party decides they're not going in a direction where they respect and honour trans rights as human rights. How will you respond? What then?
I think we're going to do a lot of assessing after conference. So as I mentioned before, our governance structure is interim because we believe it is a possibility that your party doesn't go the way we want it to. Obviously, we believe the more involved we are with your party, the more we reduce the chance of it going in that direction. But we're fully aware it's a possibility. So the nice thing is, even if your party is a complete flop, we've got a national trans organisation with, I think last time I looked at the sheet, we had 120, 130 signups. We've got 500 followers on Twitter, a good couple hundred more followers on Instagram. We've got links now with different organisations across the country. I think it'd be brilliant to have that sort of national trans organisation that is explicitly political and explicitly socialist. There's a lot of like great work out there from like news organisations like yourself, from charities, from social pressure and protest groups. But I think we are lacking something that is explicitly political, has a political analysis, and wants to sort of get involved in the sort of political fights that we have. So if your party is a waste of time, I don't think it will be. I think it will be salvageable even if bad things happen. But worst case scenario, we've got a brilliant trans organisation to run.
It reminded me of last year I interviewed Ira and Emrys as part of Ed Magazine on the Transgender Studies Quarterly Trans Marxist issue, and we talked about this kind of like how trans Marxism can be used in organizing as trans people, and we talked about that kind of thing about how easily things can be taken away, and we talked particularly about Action for Trans Health, like that it's part of the point of the movement is the movement as a process. Whatever organization you're trying to sort out the contours of in that given moment, none of them are really going to last forever. And the people who have organized within it will go on to organize more. And I think that's something that I really try and hold on to regardless of the outcome, that like we have created a group where we've like got lots of like-minded trans people together to develop politics that I don't think I've really seen for quite a long time. Like some of these demands I was reading, I was like, this is kind of frankly should be the bare minimum for any left party in Britain. I do honestly think we can go further, but like again, it takes time. It is about deconstructing narratives. But I do think for me, it's like I just always have to try and hold out hope and just ensure that we can still organise, whether in a party, amongst ourselves, or in any other kind of local or national organising.
So there's the possibility that in a worst case scenario, TLG may decide to just continue as a trans organisation in their own right. Fair?
Yeah, there's nothing stopping us. And yeah, like I said, we've brought in a lot of like brilliant people that are sort of new to politics. We've been engaging in political education. We've got so many brilliant ideas that we're having to put on the back burner right now because we're preparing for this conference. But like we really want to start sort of our own like I said, our publication platform, our own ways of submitting ideas and proposals, of really expanding the debate on sort of the trans left.
We're gonna get into basically one of the big stories that's been the media have been running with has been the situation with the membership and the membership data and all of that sort of thing, right? So how have people in your party been responding to this, and do you think there is clarity and security now?
So as I understand it, Zara Sultana has now become a director of MOU Limited. That's the Memorandum of Understanding Group, which holds the funds from that initial sign up. As I understand it, I think I've got no worries about my data being held by that group. The only issue is when it comes to the transfer of funds. And this is what it comes back to. It comes back to these sort of petty fights at the top of the party that I've gone on about, and I just hate to see them. But essentially, there's a lot of like legal stuff happening within a transfer of funds from a limited company to a political party. I'm not a lawyer, but there's a lot that can go on. There's liability as well. So it's kind of that thing of if the Information Commissioner's Office institutes a fine on the MOU group and they've handed over all the funds, the sole director is Zara Sultana, so she's going to be 100% liable for that. And so I can understand why it is taking some time. There are suggestions that maybe it's being used to sort of delay some of the setting up of conference, because obviously we have these funds, we could book out the biggest arena in Liverpool with them, but until they come through, we're kind of having to think about where is this conference going to be held and things like that. And that's a bit that frustrates me, to be honest. And yeah, I'm not concerned about data or privacy or anything like that. I'm, fully understand how my data was used in that sense. It's just these sort of legal wranglings that does get a bit frustrating. But again, I think every time we see a story like this, our options are give up on the party, go be a fatalist, stop getting involved in things, or use it to fuel our arguments. Yes, this is horrible, but we're saying that these people should have nothing to do with the party in a few months. And I think that's one way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to advocate for denying doomerism power. What is your realistic best case scenarios for your party over the next 6 months to a year?
Ideally, I think it would be great to effectively have kind of the demands of like the minimum, all the demands we have with all the factions, as well as the kind of alternative constitution and political statements of the Democratic Socialists. Like if those were like all taken and we set up your party and it had a really good name and we really up the propaganda, social media, that would be great. And but for me, it's not just that. It's like that's the starting point regardless. That's the best outcome for like step one. Because then after that, you can have the best politics in the world, you can have the best social media. Doesn't mean anything if you're not engaged in local communities and you're not out there. Like I know it's a bit like cliche. It's way easier said than done, but it's kind of like the thing of like, here in South Yorkshire, it's like, Sheffield has kind of a, just on a Saturday, there was a massive anti-fascist demonstrations against UKIP coming here. Sheffield has a lot of radical history. But then you go outside of Sheffield and it's like all massive reform areas, like Doncaster, Rotherham and all this. Like, and I feel like if no party, whether it's your party, the Greens or any other party, is not building in these areas as much as they can, that's what I just think's kind of the concern is like, the best outcome is kind of having all the infrastructure ready to go and to also continue to have democracy and accountability and, effectively tear down the kind of the horrendous legacy of left transphobia in Britain, which I do think is gradually admittedly just because of age, just all these old ones are just not as involved or, whatever, but also, it's just trying to dismantle it because it has done, I think, so much damage. Like not just the harm it's done to loads of trans people who would be amazing organisers, amazing at any kind of politics, who've been just treated like absolute garbage, and that includes like me. I've had so many bad experiences with this. I'd like to ensure that the best outcome is that we build a politics. We finally actually can have socialism in Britain, ideally. That's kind of
Same thing, like I'd love for the Democratic Socialist demands to get adopted in full. I'd settle for any of them getting adopted because it is a brilliant set of demands, a brilliant alternative constitution. And Sylvia said it's about base building. You're probably expecting us to say, we want to win a local council or we want to have 20 MPs. I don't want any councillors in the next 12 months, I don't want to have the power to administer cuts. And until we have a base that's ready to resist austerity budgets, until we can run an almost like militant style council and reject austerity politics, then we shouldn't have the right to almost put candidates forwards. So yeah, base building is massively important for me because, like I said, our goal is a socialist government. Socialist government is going to face every single barrier possible from the international financial class to disrupt it. And it's only with the base that we can stay true. We want to avoid the mistakes of Syriza. We want to avoid the mistakes of Mitterrand. We need to have a very developed working class and a socialist class, even if we win every seat in Parliament.
Are there any final thoughts or points that you want to raise?
I guess as a closing remark, I just want to say that fatalism is a really bad way of thinking about politics. And as trans people ourselves, we have to think that it is possible to make a change with this world. As trans people, for everyone that's out there, we have said that we need to be involved in making change and we can make that change possible. But we also appreciate how scary it is accepting that you can be an agent of change. So I say is no matter what your politics, if you're a Green Party member, if you're your party member, if you're a Liberal Democrat, believe in yourself that you can be an agent of change, believe that you can make an impact. Don't rely on anyone else to do it for you. Don't rely on any leaders to be your mouthpiece. Make sure that you connect with other people out there that are like you. Make sure that you organize yourself, you educate yourself, and then people will see the power that you hold. And I think that's what you have to bring to politics, regardless of what your affiliations are.
I think for me, any final remarks for me is that when we talk about politics, when we talk about parties and electoralism, it's always on my mind to think about all the people who do not have access to this stuff. So people who can't, like, for example, can't be registered in parties, which is something that your party, some demands to include that to ensure that migrants and asylum seekers can be involved. It's thinking about like prisoners who can't be involved in this stuff. And I think like being aware of like all the people who can't engage with these politics and that hopefully when we talk about this to be reminded of that. And that includes trans people as well, of course, and that whenever we discuss this stuff to just like always think about the ways we have the opportunities to do this compared to other marginalized trans people, and to ensure that they are also given the opportunities to engage, given the opportunities to be to learn, to be more active and involved, and that no party billing for me will go far enough without the whole trans community being involved. It's not liberatory unless it's for all trans people.
If anyone else wants to get involved, where can they find you?
Best place to go is our website, transliberationgroup.org.uk. That has links to all our social media on it. It has links to our sign-up form, has links to our demands, and everything you want to know. So yes, transliberationgroup.org.uk.
It was a long one. So socialists, am I right?
Hey.
I was a victim too. At least my wife was. She had friends who were socialists.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so there was with two people, Rosa, who declined to give a surname, and Sylvia McShane, who I know of old.
Not saying she's old, just...
Not saying she's old, I've known her for a very long time, and it was kind of interesting, but there was a point right at the start where I had to say, okay, so we've been chatting for 20 minutes and you've given us the answers to 2 questions. So can we pick up the pace a little bit, please?
Yeah, bless them. They were so thorough. Like it wasn't
extremely.
It wasn't just waffle. They clearly prepped a lot.
Yes.
And wanted to say everything, and that's so understandable. But eventually we were like, we're so sorry. We're gonna have to ask. Don't be afraid to try a soundbite, like.
Yeah, just give it a whirl. Give it a whirl, girl.
But I really respect putting that level of effort and energy into it. Like, you know, I think that it does show how much they really care about this and how much they want to make it work. And I think that's something that is definitely worth something. And I do understand the energy of, like, let's not put all of our eggs in one basket with Zach Polanski, although I understand also the need for a unified vote. I think that's very much a grey area kind of question and answer, you know?
I hope that they get what they want out of it, because what they want is like a genuine left proper socialist party.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't just collapse. I hope it doesn't be another god that fails kind of thing.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't I hope that the teething problems that we saw are teething problems, albeit may they be slightly more chewing problems. But yeah, that it's I hope that the more that this goes on and after conference and everything, there's a bit more of a solidified understanding of what your party is and what it stands for, and it means that they'll be able to better know how much they want to engage in that fight. Maybe they win it. Who knows? I'd love it. I'd love it if we have two parties that are lefty that are supporting trans rights, because I don't want to have to decide it. I don't want to have to decide who I vote for based on a single issue, but I kind of have to when that issue is whether I am allowed to exist in public. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it means I don't have to be a single issue voter, and I'd love that.
So when I was doing all my voting for the Green Party once I joined and was voting for Zach and everything, so I went through the list and kind of, okay, what's this person said about trans rights? What's this person said about trans rights? This person was a founding member of Green Party Women and is very concerned about women's sex-based rights. I was like, okay, I am not voting for you. So I was a single issue voter. But like, I happen to have a couple of hours to do that. Not everybody does. Some of them, you know, and I wonder to what extent Sylvia and Rosa, obviously two very thoughtful and kind of committed to the ideals person who've got a lot of time to put into it. But I wonder about people who don't have the same ability to commit in sort of thought and word and deed and time, and will just kind of go along with, oh yeah, I heard about that, that's the thing to do, and it ends up becoming, you know, a bit turfy. So I worry that people like Sylvia and Rosa are going to get it stolen off them by people who aren't really engaged. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, co-opting happens a lot.
Co-opting
of radical and again, human rights should not be radical, but they are made radical in a world that is as inhumane. But yeah, these kind of all the time, we see co-opting of things like that on smaller scales, on bigger scales, and it's totally valid to have those concerns. And I'm sure because they seem to have been organizing for quite a while in their own separate ways and spaces. I feel as though they're going to be able to watch out for stuff like that. I feel like the only thing that one of the things that stood out to me was the moment with so I understand that in the party they strive for MPs not having any like power more than the average member in terms of what direction the party goes and how policy and all those kind of things, and I completely get that, completely validate that. I think that would be swell. My only concern is that can be true inside the house, but outside the house, those MPs that we don't want to have any more power than any other member because they shouldn't be allowed to, you know, to massage moral panics, right? To borrow off what the legacy media are doing. Outside that house, they have much more social and material capital to make their case and to be influential. And my only wonder was is there enough recognition that no matter how equal you make it in-house, out of house, they're going to still have that power, and that can still sway people. And if there is so many more people being brought into the party on the backs of those MPs who manage to stay in the party even as a member but not have the power that they want and all of this, that, the other, that can still, as you say, allow for that slowly drip feeding away, the chipping away of that like energy of actual like change into you can see that majority of like radical action and change start to erode. And I wonder if there's a little bit of idealism there. But the only way to know is to find out and is to try. And I'm going to respect the effort more than I'm going to be worried about the possible consequence, when I feel like if we just go, oh no, there's no point at all to your party right now, before they've even decided what they stand for, what direction they're going, and things like that, I think it is a bit premature, because at the end of the day, we are then kind of going, we need to put all of our eggs in one basket, as if that worked out well the last time we tried it with Corbyn.
Yeah, 100%. Right, jolly good. Well, this has been thoughtful political discussion. Now let's do Trans Joy. So, Dawn Winters says today's Trans Joy is actually last Sunday's. Some shiny person has made a deal with Manchester Aquatic Centre and gotten a trans and gender diverse swim session running. Gods, I have missed swimming. And I was there as well. It's every Sunday at Manchester Aquatic Centre, and I'll be there flailing around on pool noodles, letting the water take some of my weight and doing... Swimming's probably overstating it slightly, given I'm not really able to do that, but... it was good, just sort of messing around in the water, doing a bit of light hydrotherapy, all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I love a good gender diverse swimming session, because swimming is a primal pleasure and we should all be able to go and do it.
Jessica says the voices in my head have stopped misgendering me, which is wonderful, if a little bit ominous. I know what it's like, though. Sometimes you, like... get it in your head for a second and you're like, whoa, where the fuck did that come from?
C. Irons has said for her 2-year HLT anniversary is this week. Even in the days where things seem a bit bleak, I catch a glance of a reflection of myself in it. Makes me so happy to see the woman I have always been emerging.
Awesome. Chrysalis, love it. So Fushiko says, I am intersex but have a uterus and ovaries and identify as a genderqueer lesbian. Heart of the Woods made me very, very happy and helped me sort out so many of my trans issues, as well as seeing a great love story with a trans protagonist and trans VA voicing her. I also have been loving Monster Prom 2 Monster Camp Sawyer, as they are a wonderful NB protagonist who I play whenever I want to be a they-them. Sawyer is also not the only they-them protagonist, and you can also choose pronouns for any player character in all the Monster Proms. My first ever run, I actually picked Brian and named them Midori and used they-them. So lots of trans joy for Monster Prom, and these are computer games. In case that wasn't obvious in terms of playing as and picking a character, those are all computer games, and they sound affirmatory as fuck. So enjoy them.
Nice. Samantha Duke says, I am currently in a gay bar for Halloween and made a new friend who is in the early stage of transitioning, hoping to be some kind of helpful if I can, sort of pay forward the kindness I've been shown.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Love that.
Yes. Yeah. So Lilo says I participated in a charity run for my company. I was the only LGBTQ plus person there, and I wore my rainbow unicorn workout shirt and yoga miniskirt for the 10-kilometer run.
Nice.
I managed to finish in 95 minutes at last place. The company's photographer was too happy to take photos of me while representing the company. Felt a bit like rainbow washing to me, but as the company had rented out locker room space of a shower, they issued me with a woman's locker room key. They took one look at my name and at me before handing me the locker key. At first I was slightly confused, and another employee pointed me to the men's room, but my keys didn't work there. So I found it working in a woman's room. One of my colleagues was in the ladies' shower room and smiled at me. I basically kept my head down and discreetly changed into the toilet. First time anyone simply acknowledged me as a woman. I may not be the prettiest, especially my age, but happy to get what I can.
That's really nice. JJ Hooray says, I was marmed by an elderly veteran at the VA yesterday while we were waiting for scripts at the pharmacy. Nice. Veteran solidarity.
Lily H says, for some reason I'm cute, and I don't know why. And there were attached photos, and they were indeed cute. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats on cuteness.
Nice. And next up is Erin. I did a short for Trans Awareness Week a few weeks back, and it was released today. Really happy how it turned out.
Amazing.
Yeah, we will share that out, of course. It's an Instagram short. So Ash Aimed said, small one for me, got my ears pierced not too long ago, feels very femme and I love it. And I remember that as well. Congratulations, well done, etc.
So Melissa Polton said, I performed my award-winning poem in front of a place that I haven't been in for over 3 years and didn't drink. I'm now 18 weeks without alcohol.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Awesome.
I'm excited to read this next one because it's funny. Dinosaur says, I went to a Shrek-themed fancy dress party as one of the 3 blind mice. There were many strangers, and it was definitely not a queer space by any measure. I had an older woman come up to me and call me the sexiest mouse, and I died at the realization that in that moment, I passed and wasn't just being politely respected. Love that. Yes.
Yeah. So Kit says the weather is really good today. Bright blue, clear skies that I can't stay inside for. And I believe, that was posted today as we record this. And the weather was actually quite nice.
Beautiful. Love that. It was pissing it down here.
Right.
That's
Sorry,
fine though.
darling.
We allowed for the good weather to be in other places. It's the way of life.
So next up, Jay, my university raised the trans flag on campus today in celebration of Transgender Awareness Week.
Amazing.
And Christina, in responding to Jay, says, my uni library has a decently sized book display for it. And so they've got a picture and there's a library with trans flags there, and Juliet Jack's trans and Kit Himes before we were trans as part of it. It was a really nice little display.
Yeah. And Hazley says, I saw a trans positive sticker in a public bathroom the other day. It's not much, but it's trans joy. And fuck yeah. Yeah, it is. I love that. Listen, any time that you see a little sticker or a little scratching on the wall of some queer little bit, especially when it's pro-trans stuff, it always makes my day. I don't know, there's something about someone taking the time in that brief moment to just communicate something to other people, and for that thing to be a communication of love for others regardless of who they are, but because they exist, and the awareness of there's also the element of because the position that we're in is a precarious one. I love that energy. I've loved that energy whenever I saw it as girls girl energy stuff. I love it when it's pro trans, pro queer. When you see little Free Palestine stickers, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it just I feel like queers communicating through bathrooms is a old cultural thing
tradition.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Next up is Tony Widmo. I am meeting my SRS surgeon in Brighton in a few days.
Yes.
Excellent stuff. Lulu, aka Make It Rain, is I'm still out here representing in my favourite hobby, and there's a photo of them very much looking airsoft ready, all armed and armoured, looking really cool and kind of scary, if we're honest.
Laura, Queen of Seagulls, says, I've arrived in Widnes for the walk in solidarity for Transgender Awareness Week this evening. I'm meeting one of my friends in person for the first time too. Hey, love that one. Congrats, Laura. Hope it's a good time.
Yeah. So next up is Ang Harrod. I had my first femme haircut yesterday. It's been long for ages, but never seen the inside of a hairdresser's. I was grinning all day about how lovely it looked. Today, after sleeping on it, not so much.
Yeah, you've got to maintain them, unfortunately. Alice Proper Nico says, I've signed up as a blood donor. Just a matter of waiting for the piercing period to end next month.
Amazing.
Nice.
And
it's a good one.
love this username. Creature of the Hill says, bit of proxy joy, which, to be honest, is just as good. Hell yeah, sympathetic joy's the one. So, young man who was friends with our youngsters and had asked for some advice on transition pathways has tea being delivered. It is in the UK now, according to the tracking, and it looks like he could be starting tomorrow or Saturday. Dead chuffed for him that he's taking control and sorting out what he needs. We look forward to seeing how much happiness it brings in him. That's fucking beautiful. Love that.
Yes.
Happy for him. Glad he's getting the good shit. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So next up is Silly Little Butterfly. I got the chance to rip into my work's discriminatory HR department, and one of the execs at work said I should be helping write policy after reading through my submission. And I've got my surgery dates confirmed this week, and that The Last of Us funds is sorted now too.
It's all coming together.
Very busy.
It's good stuff. And Morwen says, I came 18th in a women's bouldering competition. Thrilled to have scored enough points to make the leaderboard. Hell yeah.
And
Next time you'll be higher up.
Anonymous says, I got my Chris Dreamer cosplay done, both for Halloween and an upcoming convention. The Halloween party went well, although nobody recognised who Chris was beforehand. I've been making some improvements to it since then, and I'm generally pretty happy with how it turned out.
What's Chris Dreamer then? Who's that? Let's.
I'm gonna Google Chris Dreamer. Oh, Deltarune.
Awesome.
That's sick.
Okay.
Love that.
So, Sophie Staycation says, I went for a spin for the first time in my new electric wheelchair. I was able to leave the house, other than for a doctor's appointment, for the first time in months, and it felt incredible and freeing. I even made it into a bookstore and bought a book of trans philosophy to cap it all off. So, that's lovely, because I remember that day. I remember because there was a whole palaver of getting a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to retell that story right now, but there was a whole fucking thing. So when I finally got my chair, and I was just delighted that, oh, I've got it, but oh crap, I need to charge it first before I really go anywhere on it. But then all of a sudden, after being kind of trapped in the house for months, I was able to go out and about by myself. So yeah, I remember that day, and that's wonderful stuff. And congratulations, Sophie.
And lastly, it's Robin Rocks. I'll be playing Mrs. Marchmont in a production of An Ideal Husband by Oscar Wilde in 2 weeks. Getting excited and looking forward to the posh frocks.
Right, so it will not surprise any of you to learn that I used to do Amdrams. And I have been in an Oscar Wilde play, and I was playing Algernon in The Importance of Being Earnest. Which is kind of one of the funny... It's a classic, and it's one of the funnier parts to have. There's some excellent lines in there, and I've still got the book. You know, like of all the plays I was in, there was like 30 in total over years. I've still got all of the scripts for them, piled high in a tote bag on top of my bookcase. Anyway, so yeah, it can be very affirming to just sort of step out on stage and go, right, okay, who am I playing? Who is this person? Love it. I love the trans joy. I know I keep saying that, but god damn, it really gets me through, you know?
Yeah, it's like when everything was putting you down, it then picks you up on that bit.
Exactly. Thank you all for sticking with us. We will speak to you again in a couple of weeks. But if you need to keep up with what we're doing in the meantime, you can find us on Blue Sky, you can find us on Reddit, and what are the other ones that you can find us on? Instagram.
Discord, Instagram.
Yeah, we have a Discord, which we'll put a link to. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And if you really want to support us, if you really want to be helpful for us, there is, of course, Patreon. You can find us on Patreon at What the Trans, and you can become one of our supporters, which would be lovely. And thank you to all of the people that already do support us. We're about to read your names out, so stick around. And yeah, thanks for checking in with us, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you for listening.
This episode of What the Trans was produced and presented by Flint, Ashleigh and Alyx, and written by Sammy, Alyx, Flint and Ashleigh. It was edited by Amber Roberts and Amber Devereaux, with our opening theme music created by Warrett Sarah Yui Karlberg. Our episode thumbnail artwork was created by Apoa Piers, and we would especially like to thank all of our producer-level Patreons, who are Alexandra Lilly,
Andrea Brooks,
Anubis the Jackal,
April Heller,
Ariadne Pena,
Ashleigh,
B Squared,
Becky Cheadle,
B,
Bernard's Pink Jellybean,
Bernice Roust,
Bex the Mermaid,
Brandon Craig,
Break the System,
Carly Silvers,
Cassius Adair,
Kellen York,
Claire Scott,
Clara Vulliamy,
Crazy Richard.
Cindergoza.
Danielle Hardwick.
Dan Oblivion.
D.
Dr. McGee.
Dulcie.
Elizabeth Anderson.
Ellie Gray.
Ellen Mellor.
Eric Whitman.
Erin Carlson.
Eris.
Eve.
Fiona Punchard.
Flaming Daphne.
Flute Punk.
Gorstar.
Jen.
George Simmons.
Georgia Holden Burnett.
Grabalicious.
Gray.
Hazel Dust.
Heather Paterson.
Heidi Reardon.
Helen _
40 funny furries furiously fighting feckless fascists. Hey!
I'm a fawn, you dork.
That works so good after that one.
Yeah. Jack Edwards.
Jane.
Jem Hoskins.
John.
Jordan Starr.
Kai Lewin.
Karakan 12.
Katie Cox.
Katie Reynolds.
Kiki T.
Laura Bailey.
Laura, Queen of She-Goes.
Lauren O'Nions.
Lee Downs.
Lentil.
Levi Hart.
Lex Phoenix.
Lanus.
Leah Story.
Mel.
Melissa Brooks.
Melissa Harker.
Melody Nix.
Michael Jojo.
Mika.
Monsieur Squirrel.
Murgatroyd.
Mix Afon.
Nastron.
Now Art.
Needles and Threads.
Nick Ross.
Ontologically Unjust.
Orion Matrix.
Asheen.
Patreon user.
Rebecca Prentice.
Roberto DePrunk.
Root -1.
Rose Absolute.
SAP.
Sabrina Arthus.
Sabrina McVeigh.
Samantha Raven.
Sarah.
Sarah.
Satcab.
Sean Phillips.
Cena.
Siobhan Fergus Evans.
Sky Collane.
Sophie Lewis.
Stella.
Susan K. Quinn.
Tabitha Joe Cox, aka Candy.
Tanya B.
Ted Delphos.
The Socialist Party of Great Britain, 1904.
The Splund.
Tig Slater.
Tin Roof.
Toby.
Trowan.
Undead Narfa.
Vic Kelly.
Vic Parsons.
Willow Tree.
And Zoe B. Thank you all. You're all
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Mwah, we love you.
the 40 Furious Furries. Fuck it. Banger username. Banger username. Love that.
My favourite's Orion Matrix.
Orion Matrix. I really like the way that you go ontologically unjust. It's so fun.
Anyway, thanks for listening. Goodbye, all.
Bye. 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 Do something gay today. Right, I'm done. Or else. That's it. That's your homework. You gotta be gay or else.